ERS for the cities and the counties, and we're looking at this deficit 6 years ago and saying, why are you lowering rates? This doesn't make any sense. I can look at this and go, you need to put more money in, or you need to maintain the level of rates that you're doing now. Don't lower the contribution rates. All that does is cause the deficit to grow. So those are two of the biggest things from my perspective as a county magistrate that affect cities and counties that I look forward to working with them on going forward. So, but you're right. We need a real cleaning up of how we tax the general public and quit cherry picking here and there of how we do it. So, but I'm a local guy, so I'm not there in Frankfurt.
So we've talked in the past about the city, as any of us could always potentially be the victim of theft or fraud, something like that. Coming through checks. Can you address in here the limitations of that? It's not liability, but limitations.
Are you talking about cyber, or are you talking about like, okay.
And the fact that there's not a lot of products out there the city has to purchase.
Sure.
That's why it's important that we have the robust reviews in place that
So you all, you probably saw the nearby school system that had the issue, 8 weeks ago or so. They are, that's one of my clients. They had not had cyber liability previously until I started working with them and we put the cyber liability policy in place. So previously they were running bare with no coverage. The KLC policy does have cyber liability coverage in it, and the cyber crime part of that policy is where someone would maybe send you a phishing email or send you an invoice and ask you to electronically transfer that money, and that portion has a $100,000 limit to it. That is very difficult to buy more than $100,000 to $250,000, and the reason is because it's always human error. It is not something that just happens. Somebody has to hit that button to transfer that money. So it's always human error. And the expectations from the insurance carriers is that that person that's making that electronic transfer picks up the phone and calls that vendor to verify that that transfer is supposed to be done and made. And I just thought about this because Commissioner Brooks is here. Kentucky Bank was our bank, I say our bank. It's my wife works for Scott County Schools. I live there. They did a fantastic job. They actually caught what was happening and stopped the transaction and helped the district get the money back. But there is that there. My recommendation to you all is that you always have dual authentication or dual authorization. That when you get the email, you get the voicemail, however it comes into you, that you pick up the phone and call the vendor and say, hey, we're getting ready to transfer money, just want to verify that this is correct, along those lines. And then from the other aspect of checks and all that, check signers are bonded, and so they are actually required by either KA or KRS to be bonded for the city, and tax collectors are as well. So.
Questions for me?
No, that was my question for last week, is how taking care of our side.
Yes. Yeah. And then on the other aspect of it, not the cyber crime, which is where you would get the money stolen through fund transfer fraud or something like that, but the cyber liability, where if your systems were breached, held for ransom, that's a totally separate limit. So those are two different coverages, and they're covered separately.
And following up on Commissioner Brooks' previous conversation, and so one thing that we are doing, just as for the insurance side, is that as we update our server internally, we are also going to move to a 2FA, which is a two-factor authentication for emails. So that means that if you get an email or log remotely into it, you're going to have a second authentication. So if somebody steals your password and has your username, that's not going to be enough. They're going to have to utilize an app that you can either get a text message or an app download, they put a code in to be able to access your account. So it's another step that we're looking at. Again, we're not gonna 100% prevent, but another step that we're looking at to help maybe lessen our exposure on that as well. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
We need action on that. We did, I think it was part of the numbers in the budget.
Aaron, you've already approved that insurance, right?
No, we haven't, this
No.
is, we
This
just,
would be-
Yeah.
So what, that's what, so we would need a
I
motion.
don't wanna do it again.
That's David if he wants to be approved.
So you have the breakdown in front of you, on page 7 and 8. And so do we have a motion to approve the insurance renewal for property liability and workers' compensation for fiscal year 20, as presented? So, motion and a second. Any additional questions or comments?
I do want to tell you guys, one of the things David and I are working on too is we're gonna be, this year we'll be reviewing some of our properties and doing, like we've done, instead of waiting 20 years to make sure our values are correct, we're gonna be doing that this year, coming for the next year, so that'll be something we'll be working on throughout the year.
If everyone was able to hear that, but Aaron's working with David and his team to review our properties to ensure that the values that are assessed to them in valuation on the insurance policies is correct. So we're working on that before the next renewal period. So, roll call, please.
Commissioner Galbraith,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner Baruch,
Yes.
Mayor Plummer,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen Edwards. Motion carries.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Dave. Second reading of an ordinance amending the fiscal year 19 budget. We had first reading of the last one. This is on page 9. Brad?
Sure, so this is ordinance 2019-4, an ordinance amending the City of Paris, Kentucky annual budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2018 through June 30, 2019, estimating revenues and resources and appropriating funds for the operation of city government. Just kind of as we reviewed on the first reading of this, on the general fund totals, we're increasing the revenues up to $7,750,500,000. That's a $250,000 increase to compensate for the borrowing on the police vehicles. And so then subsequently, we've increased the expenditures for that amount as well too. On utility fund, we are not changing revenues at all. Likewise, not on expenditures. We're just simply reallocating from personnel and operating expenditures down into the capital outlays to help with some of the purchases for the year.
So this is the second reading. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second by the mayor. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner Baruch,
Yes.
Mayor Plummer,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen Edwards,
Approved.
Commissioner Galbraith.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Final item under old business action items is an update on the communication that we've had with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, District 7 staff, and the Mayor and Commission, as I relayed to you through electronic means. Mr. Withrow and I were able to have a phone conversation last week with District 7 staff on a number of items. One being the discussion about signage, commemorative signage. The next step in that process is that we would need to identify 2 locations for commemorative signage that we would like to see, or for like the Transportation Cabinet to consider erecting that signage, and it would be in commemorative acknowledgement of Paris being the birthplace of Garrett Morgan. The second part of that would be the specific language to go on the sign. And once we supply that to the District 7 staff, they'll evaluate, and then they will send back a cost estimate for the erection. That program does require the city to cover the cost of the purchase and installation. District 7 staff would do the installation up to their standards and codes. And they would also require that this body enter into an agreement for perpetual maintenance of that signage, so. As I asked in electronic, in the email, just to give that some consideration, about areas, two areas of where we may want to request of that, and you can follow that up through electronic correspondence if you have any thoughts on that, and then also what type of language you might wish to see. It can be something as simple as, birthplace, Paris, Kentucky, birthplace of your work, or home to, or something like that. You've seen some of those others around, but there is some flexibility in that, so, I'll answer any questions on that matter, if there are some. We are limited to two. Under the state, that authorizes that, you're limited to have, 2 locations.
Would it be something we would consider throwing it out to the public for some, language, having some type of context with the young people to be involved in doing something like that?
Definitely, if that's your, if that's your wish, yeah, that's, prohibition of where we get our information to recommend to them, so.
Just need to know precisely to decide.
Yeah, that's right. So,
The price and how many words, what it's limited to, and
There's-
like just having,
There's, we can do that, we can put something this afternoon up on our Facebook page, and hopefully maybe even the paper can help us out and maybe get something in the paper, if not by this Thursday, by next Thursday. The other side of that is the location, the 2 locations, and, we've, I think, previously discussed, the entrance into the city along, the Paris Pike corridor. That is an area that is proliferated with signage now, as well, so there may be some other areas beyond that you wanted that would give a little bit more exposure, and wouldn't get lost in the initial signage that's there, so. The other thing that we discussed, or one of the other matters that we discussed with District 7, and still waiting on an update, is the plan for District 7 to reconstruct High Street. That is something that they are working through.
They did acknowledge.
That it is a plan.
They acknowledge the plan, but she couldn't discuss that.
Yeah, she was having to look into it, we've not had a follow-up, but part of that discussion, also, Mike and I asked is, would there be consideration for additional traffic calming and safety features to be part of that new construction of High Street, or the renovation of High Street at safety tab? I think we're all keenly aware that as you come down High Street from the top of the hill heading, the one way down High Street, that traffic flows at a high rate of speed. Top of the hill, just past the fire department, and come down over that hill, and at least once a week, I know that I hear brakes locking up as somebody approaches the stoplight, and they speed up and try to run through it, and very fortunate that we've not had an accident there. So we did ask about opportunities to explore and to have conversation or a seat at the table in their review of how that may occur. One of the things that she discussed that they do is sometimes they do some bump outs in the middle of the block. So example for right here, as you exit out of City Hall, that parking lot, and maybe putting some little bump outs there that allow pedestrian traffic to step out away from the curb instead of having as long of a traverse path between one side of the street and the other. It's also seen that end up being traffic calming measures. We did ask for consideration about signaling on High Street, additional signaling to help with that, and those are all something that they said they would be, or at least in that conversation, we would be willing to explore. So, did want to make you aware of that, and is there anything else you wanted to update in regards to that conversation? So, any questions on that from the commission? So a great suggestion, Commissioner Edwards. We will work with how to distribute that out to the public and get some feedback on that. And Andrea, if you might have some input, we will welcome your input as well from planning and zoning on the signage and language that we make. So. We'll move on to our new business action item section. Request for street closure for the Pumpkin Oktoberfest. Mr. G is here. Ned?
Good morning, everybody.
Request is found on page 10 of your packet.
Everybody has
The letter, yes, sir.
Thank y'all for letting me present to you today. This is the third time that we've asked to have the Oktoberfest / Pumpkin Festival downtown. It's been every year. The last 2 years, it's been unbelievable in the amount of growth we've had. And this year, we're looking to do it where it's all under AccuTrans umbrella as a one event. It's Oktoberfest / Pumpkin Festival, and we're asking that for the approval to close the streets, Main Street, from what we would request with the cabinet would be from 5th Street to 2nd Street, and then from Airdrie Place to and Backers Row at High Street coming down. So you have the Horseshoe and Main Street. Usually we stop at 4th Street, but if we continue to have more vendors like we did last year, that's why we were wondering about moving it to 5th Street, which would allow us for more vendor space. This year we're not asking for the closure of the parking lot for Friday night. That is the city's parking lot at 4th and Pleasant. We will like to have the opening to that parking lot there at Main Street to be parking where cars will be removed, because that's where we have a bouncy house every year. And with that, I'm just asking for your all's approval for us to have the street closures. We'll submit to the District 7 office for the closures and report back if there's any issues.
And Ned, as part of this request and expanding or up to the 5th Street, would you see that closure just since the closure is to be in effect from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. on both days, and then they would reopen overnight?
Friday night it would just be 5 to in the evening.
Okay.
But
it wouldn't be an overnight closure, it would
No,
open up
no.
in between. Okay, that's just for clarification.
Right.
It wouldn't be starting on Friday and stay closed through the end of the event on Saturday.
No.
So you've heard the request. What's the pleasure of the commission? I have a motion to approve the request by Commissioner Brooks. And a second. Matt had already seconded. Got ahead of you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, sorry, Mayor. You can be the third if you want to. For the request as presented, and that is contingent upon also obtaining the state permission for right-of-way closure. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Peru?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen Edwards? Commissioner Galbraith?
Yes, ma'am.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank y'all very much.
We'll move on to, our next item is the first reading of an ordinance related to the zoning text amendment. Brian?
Yes, so in your packet, you have materials from the planning office. Relates to this amendment to the text of the zoning ordinance, which has been approved by the planning commission. And so what this ordinance will do is it allows as a conditional use first floor apartments within the central business district with certain restrictions. You see the restrictions are there laid out in bold. That the building must have been continuously vacant for 3 years. The limitation on the square footage, that the entrance must be in the rear to still allow for the retail and commercial space in the front, and that there must somehow be parking, privately owned parking. So you're not allowed to incorporate any of the city parking lots or street, and then there should be no retail access between the residential apartment. Again, this would just be for the downstairs apartment. So that's how it comes from the planning commission. If you all like some or all of the restrictions, you can adopt them in whole, you can revise them, you can eliminate one or more of them, or you can add one or more to it.
Any And as this would be the first reading, if there are some, considerations to be made, that would be done between this reading and the next reading.
Or you have anything now? Yeah, I mean, I think if we give questions,
That would be a great time.
Do you have to have a back entrance? I understand, I think it's ordered something, you gotta have a back.
according to this, it has to be in the rear. Now, if you wanted to change that, where we're on the side or the rear.
So I'm just thinking about the existing buildings downtown. The old buildings, sometimes you don't have the.
Don't have a rear
exit
entrance.
outside, back, to the back. But if this is being remodeled, I'm just wondering, do you have to have another door to go out the back?
You're gonna have to have a second door.
You have to have two doors.
Right, the
Okay.
question is, when it says located in the rear of the building, does that mean the opposite from the actual front?
Right.
Or does that mean on the side,
Okay.
near the rear?
So for example, currently, you have residential in the downtown that, although it's not on the first floor, it does have a forward-facing or front of the building opening. And so, the question becomes then, that if that's okay for that, then why is it not, even if the apartment has to be all the way to the rear, would that be prohibitive from, of having a front entrance, which you already have now? What's the difference? I think that's a valid question. Some communities have already explored that. And I'll use, as an example, the Rob Mill building. You have 3 distinct front entrances to that building. You also have a rear entrance, but you have 3 distinct front entrances, 2 commercial and 1 residential. The residential in the center of the building. It doesn't, my personal opinion is it doesn't detract from having a front curb entrance, because you're not going into a residential, immediately into a residential. You have a period of entrance, and then you also have steps that go up. The same way as if some communities have had a forward-facing entrance to a rear apartment that you just go down a long hallway to get to it. It's still separate from the commercial space. But it also is not cost prohibitive for remodeling, to your point, Mayor, is that there's not an entrance in the back of the building and then cutting one out, and depending on the structure of the building. And we have certain areas in the district that is very tight behind those buildings, and the access is very minimal. And so would it be prohibitive? I guess, for this commission's consideration would be that, since it is a conditional use anyway, and has to go back for planning and zoning, do you need that additional, if you're gonna look at it on a case-by-case basis, is the bulleted points, are they all necessary and required? And that's for this body to determine. But those are some things that other communities have explored and wrestled with. The other thing that has been brought up to me is the requirement of the off-street privately owned parking for at least 1 vehicle. We don't have that requirement, everywhere else in the city. It's privately owned lot, so if you have a building that has no access to the rear, has no alleyway to the rear, where does that privately owned space come into? Where is that gonna be provided? Well, for example, between the 800 and the 700 block, if you look as you're looking down Main Street one way to your right, where is the privately owned space if somebody wanted to renovate one of those buildings and have that? Where is that privately owned space going to come from? Because you have 2 public lots there, but you don't have a private lot. And so that's again, those are questions that I think are valid questions for consideration.
Yeah, and I think, and this is just a wording, and Andrew, I don't know if the specific issue of the entrance came up. I don't know if, when it says in the rear, I don't know if that meant literally the back or just the back portion, because I think most of the buildings that sit on the corners don't have true back doors, they have side doors near their, and I hate to pick on some, I'm thinking of like Bobby Schiffer's studio. I don't think there's a door in the actual back, I think it's on the side, near the rear. So was that a discussion point you all had about?
It sure was, yeah. I mean, in the delineation of what is considered the rear, according to the planning commission, it's the back of the building. So, you know, the throwing in the corner, the scenario of what if it's a corner building, that didn't come up, so.
Because obviously, buildings that are landlocked are gonna have no sides.
You may not have access to the rear either.
Right.
And so you're gonna be limiting factor for, if the intent is to help for increased development opportunities of these properties, and again, it's something for this commission to consider, is if these additional proposals further limit the opportunity for that, and is there some way to enhance those buildings' viability, and again, if it's conditional use, maybe you don't need all of these, specifics put out there. And if it's a conditional use, it goes back to that body anyway.
And I think something to think about is some of these restrictions are not in place, or maybe even all of them, for upstairs apartments.
Right.
And certainly it's well within your all's rights to add those restrictions. But you don't have to if you think that's going to inhibit the ability for people to be attracted, purchase the building, renovate the building.
And you gotta look at, I guess you gotta look at both sides and still keep it attractive for the other businesses downtown, not that you have, of course, they're already renting out downstairs apartments as well. I think they've done a decent job of trying to eliminate some of those avenues on the other end of it, so you don't have just people walking in the front door of a downtown apartment, but you also have that upstairs, so. How'd you all address that question, I guess? When someone said that we got a front entrance that goes upstairs, but what if it was a possibility to use the same entrance to go to the back end of the downstairs?
The main concern with the front entrances was, I don't know if loitering is the right word.
That's what they talked about, like,
But-
I'm gonna take my chair and sit down on
Yeah, front.
it, or put it down.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it was the potential detraction from the commercial space. And, so, you know, those were the two items that came up. And that's why they ended up with the rear.
So from that
With them
conversation,
requiring
then,
rear
did
entrance.
it say that same argument, then, are we gonna be then looking to change the second floor? Because if it is a detraction to commercial space of having a doorway, then any doorway is a detraction.
But you didn't wanna add to the ones that are existing.
Yeah, I got you.
Something else.
But I mean, but if that's, yeah, right, I mean, if that's the argument that it is a detraction of having just a doorway to commercial space, then I guess then we were saying that we have a detraction to commercial space already in existence, even though it goes to the second floor. I mean, that's, and again, there's communities that have, we're not unique on this, and there's communities that have looked at it and have found ways to have, you know, those.
That's
just,
awesome.
you know, and, you know, the loitering, again, you know, what was presented to me was, what's to prevent somebody from a second floor coming down and sitting, doing the same thing, sitting on their doorstep or their street or whatever, and then you do have a transitional period into the downtown already that is residential, and people sit in their front yards, is that loitering? You know, so those were just some of the other things that I've asked of me, so. Again, it's for this commission's pleasure to, if you want to adopt as presented, then we won't instruct the city attorney to do any before the second reading.
Right, and you don't have to vote on this next one. You can think about it, hear some people, come back next meeting, kick around some more ideas, and then vote July. You have plenty of time left on the clock. If you want to do this.
60
tonight.
days, yeah.
Yeah.
So it would have to be enacted, you did May 21st, so no later than July 21st, or it would stand as presented.
in the minutes for the planning commission meeting for that hearing, they'll be reviewed and approved, next Thursday, so if any of you would like to look at the specific minutes, you're welcome to.
This amendment only applies to first floor, right?
As presented, as amending the zoning ordinance relating to conditional uses in the central business district zone.
You got two cars, what is the other? City parking lot, Main Street?
Yeah, well, now, so this doesn't affect how many cars someone has, it's just that they are supposed to designate this.
And then who?
More likely, their conditional use application would be denied if they don't have dedicated parking.
Private road, and then who would be required to enforce that?
Well, the current parking.
It's always about enforcement.
Right.
But the problem is on the front end, if someone makes an application, for the conditional use permit, they're not gonna meet the criteria if you don't own extra space somewhere.
And was there discussion about it just says off-street privately owned parking shall be designated in a certain, so they could designate it on the other side of town and that would be valid?
Yeah, so they started with, that's where they started talking about, well, conditional use is already by case basis. Initially, their staff recommendation was like 100 feet, was a 100-foot radius of the site itself, and the planning commission chose to take that, that limitation away, but rather add in the wording privately owned off-street parking, so that an applicant couldn't just say, well, I'm gonna park in the city parking lot right over here. So that was the reasoning behind it.
So in theory, a property owner could reach an agreement with another downtown owner who owns parking to like rent that spot, which is
Right.
quite typical.
Or like
Right.
one of the churches or this other Dollar Store or whatever down there.
Or the property owner could have proper.
Yeah, we could do it.
Renting this man.
It's any municipal garage, that's not
That's
the
not parking, right, yeah.
But it doesn't have the proximity
Right.
clause, which is what you were getting to.
Yeah,
It's
because
like,
somebody could say,
okay, so you could be
anywhere within the
It's
city.
in my
limits.
house, I got rid of the
Yeah.
driveway.
Yeah.
And is that?
Which they're gonna park in front.
Right.
That's what I would do.
Okay, so, again, it's the first reading, but good discussion, and if there's any thoughts or any interim, or in
Yeah, so if someone has revisions, additions, deletions, just let me know ahead of time. We want this on for next time.
Yeah, I think, at least worst case scenario, we're discussing it.
Would you mind, when the minutes are ready, would you mind just email them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
We'll send them over. It'll probably be the 21st.
Thank you. Next item is surplus of wastewater treatment plant vehicles and equipment. In the packet, you also have a listing there on page 17, and it's authorized under the KRS. City of Paris declares the following miscellaneous equipment as surplus. Each of the items were originally acquired for use as equipment and vehicles within the City of Paris wastewater department. They outlived their useful life with the city and are in the process of being replaced. It's a transfer for compensation is what's being proposed. We have 3 items, 99 safety back truck, 94 trailer jet, and a 94 Chevy 1-ton. The top 2 request to be sold by seal bids, and the 3rd item at auction. Patrick, is there anything that you want to update the commission on the relationship to this request? So you have the request? You have this request, and so do we have a motion to approve this request? We have a motion and a second declaring notice of surplus equipment as laid out. Is there any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Peruth.
Yes.
Mayor Plummer.
Yes.
Commissioner Allen Edwards. Commissioner Galbraith.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Brooks.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. On page 18, you have a memo from Chad in relationship to tank inspection. And Chad, if you wouldn't mind to come forward and explain the process to us, please, sir.
It's fairly simple. About every 5 years, we do an inspection. In this situation, we're going to do a remote operated vehicle inspection, and I think you've got the quotes. I included those to Mike and Darren. Suez is who I opted to recommend for price, and plus he's going to do what we've asked him to do. All 3 tanks will be inspected through ROV. Pictures and a report will be presented once everything's completed.
So the 3 tanks are the bypass tank, the 10th Street tank, and the 19th Street tank. And although the total estimated cost on this is in the range that would only require audit committee signature, we did want to bring this forward just for understanding and the ability to ask any questions that the commission may have on this. And as Chad noted in his memo, and that this would be inspected by a remote operated vehicle or an ROV. Just wanted to give you the opportunity to understand this process, the reason for doing it, and ask any questions if you had some.
It's a slightly less involved inspection. We don't have to drain the tank and we don't have to wash it out. We won't have to go back and shock it or chlorinate it, disinfect it. So it's a much more simplified process.
Better than scuba diving on it down, so.
Yeah.
Time to change.
That's what they put on a piece of equipment in there.
And again, because it falls under our procurement standards of only requiring the audit committee signature. And just for explanation is that under procurement standards that the commission adopted years ago, anything $4,999.99 as a packaged item, the city manager has authorized signature. Anything between $5,000 and $9,999.99 requires the audit committee signature. Anything between $10,000 and $19,999 requires commission approval, but does not require competitive bidding. And then currently anything over $20,000 would require either purchase off a state price contract or competitive bidding. And because this does fall into the price range or the valuation of the audit committee, it doesn't require commission action on that. But it did, just wanted to bring it forward for your understanding of this process and to be able to ask any questions.
Did I see in the book here, did they change the procurement code this time during the legislature? Or they did some tweaking on some of that?
Okay, so the model procurement code, it's not binding on, we don't follow that. We have our
Okay.
own.
Okay, we have,
Policy.
okay.
See, it's right, you change that, if we wanted to.
Yeah, that's what.
But related to that, they did raise the
Raise
publication
those,
notice from
that's right.
20 to 30,000.
Right.
So
Right.
now if it's something that's 27,000, we don't have to advertise it in the newspaper.
Okay.
Under that, right. And this body could like to revisit those procurement codes that is adopted and evaluate whether or not you wanted to make any changes to that $20,000.
Just put it on the list, but let's not be in a hurry, okay? We got other things we gotta figure out. Right, Brad?
All right. Thank you, Chad. Also in your packet, on page 21, we received last week a request addressed to the mayor and the commission for funding of the Patriotic Concert in the Garden. Pretty much lays out that request. I don't know if anybody's here from them, but I believe last year this body made a $250 donation to that event to help support that activity. And just wanted to know what your pleasure was for this year.
Don't you have some discretionary?
I do, but I think
But I
since
guess
it
we
was.
need to approve it.
Well, You can authorize
Well-
the discretionary, but since this was addressed to
the
the mayor
commission.
and the commission, I thought it prudent to bring it for your,
All right, one more question then. We've done this for years.
we reinstituted this a couple of years ago.
Yes, we've done this. Should this be included, let's say, in our list of, when we do our listing at, while we're doing our budget and things of that nature, include this as that, so we don't,
Right.
so we don't have to have an exception.
Again,
Let's
yes.
just think about maybe
Sure.
trying to do that in the future. Add that to one of our quote lists.
Of external agency funding partners.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
No, I know it's open-ended.
Yeah, so.
And so how did we decide on the 250?
Last
They
year,
don't have-
in previous years, last year was $250 is what, and that was the discussion by the body to fund. And so that's how it was decided. The body said that was a reasonable amount to help support this event.
I was gonna say, because in this, it just says it's open.
Yeah.
I didn't know if she asked for a specific amount.
No, ma'am. It was, as presented is how it was received.
Okay.
So it is a pleasure of this commission to, if you want a recommendation from staff, staff recommends the $250.
Second to the staff recommendation.
Just add them to the list. So add them for in the future. So.
That's right.
So we have a motion and a second to approve a donation of the amount of $250 to the Patriot Concert in the Garden. Is there any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mayor Plummer,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen Edwards,
Approved.
Commissioner Galbraith,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Brooks.
Yes.
Commissioner Peru.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Also, and it didn't make it into your packet, but we have, Commonwealth of Kentucky annually has an annual affidavit that is required to be signed for any of their renters. We have on the second floor, it's just that it's a standard language on that, and it's just needs the authorization pending approval by the city attorney to authorize this.
And it's odd because it's clearly written for a private owner, not another public entity, so. Basically, the mayor has to acknowledge that the city has not engaged in any campaign finance infractions or other things that the city is prohibited from doing in the first place, but with the state requirement, without any revision or alteration. So pretty much what they will tell you is you just sign it or you don't.
So we have a motion to authorize.
It's about the money.
Yeah, we have a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the affidavit for the lease agreement. and
I'll second.
affidavit. And again, in a second, pending legal review. But this is not the rental agreement. I want to make this perfectly clear. We're not talking about the rental agreement. This is just an additional step that the state requires of its property owners that it rents from to sign that affidavit. So we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Allen Edwards, Commissioner Galbraith,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Brooks.
Yes.
Commissioner Peru,
This was about the agreement for inside here, yes, yes.
Mayor Plummer.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Two items need to add to our new business. We have received a request from the Cabinet, Economic Development Cabinet. Previously in 2015, the City Commission extended signed an agreement to participate with the incentives that offered in the state. County did the same for an expansion of CMWA. That was done in 2015, and that sign off that the city would forego 1/2% of the collection of its payroll tax for the economic benefit enhancement of an expansion at CMWA. The state has asked that we extend that for a 10-year period, it was previously a 5-year period. And so what we would need, if it's the pleasure of this body, we would authorize the mayor to submit a letter to the state extending that previously agreement of 0.5% to extend that for a period of 10 years.
One thing, that's for new hires, for the new
Yes.
hires.
Yes, and there's stipulations
Right, let the
within
record-
that.
yeah,
that
let the record reflect
there-
for the new hires.
There's a financial contribution that's required of CMWA,
Right.
and there's also for, based on new hiring, they anticipate, I think it was 145.
And-
Right.
And this is just the letters.
Yeah, it's just letters.
Yeah, right.
You would have to
Right,
come back.
yes, I know.
Yeah, you come
Ultimately,
back.
we would, but we need to understand up front.
Right, this would be,
What
yes,
we're-
and there, and
what
so
we're
the
agreeing to.
and so the process is that the state, before they can approve incentives at the state level, they have to have a letter of support that equals, under this particular program equals a full 1% locally.
Right.
Now, that can be divided up by local jurisdictions, which in this case it was, in 2015, it was 0.5% by the city and 0.5% by the county. The county has already authorized a 0.5% on their portion for this extension. And so in order for CMWA to fully avail itself of the state program, another 0.5% has to be realized locally. And so they're asking for the city to amend its original from a 5-year to a 10-year.
Motion to approve.
So we have a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to submit a letter of support in relationship to the request from the Cabinet of Economic Development. Is there any other questions or comments?
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Galbraith,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner Peru,
Yes.
Mayor Plummer,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen Edwards.
Thank
Motion
you.
carries.
Thank you. Another new item that I wanted to bring for the commission's consideration this morning is that for the last 2 cycles under the Community Development Block Grant Program that's administered by the Department of Local Government. Those are HUD funds that come down to the state. The city applies directly to the Department of Local Government for consideration and use of those funds, makes an application. There's a number of things that can be applied for in that. The city has had an application pending in the last 2 cycles that has not been awarded for renovations at the fire station. Part of those renovations included the addition of a vehicle exhaust system. So when a vehicle pulls in or pulls out, starts up, that exhaust is not captured, it can be remediated into fresh air, and so it's a health and safety. I've asked Chief to come and explain that process a little bit, but also our recommendation, our request this morning will be to solicit proposals for that purchase of that type of exhaust, because the grants applications have not been successful, and we don't anticipate them being successful. We would like to have a dollar figure of what that cost would be. And our intention is, if this body approves that going forward, after we get that cost, is the money that was budgeted as a match for the grant be used to purchase of this. But that would be a future discussion about that. But this morning, just wanted Chief Deputy to explain the system and the request for permission to solicit bids.
One of the leading causes of deaths for firemen across the nation has been cancer. Obviously, used to be a badge of courage years ago when I started in the service a few years ago. The dirtier your gear was, the dirtier your body was when you came out of the fire, the more work you did. Usually left all that on your gear, your trucks, equipment. That's changed over my 20+ years in this service, to where now whenever you leave a fire scene, your gear gets washed immediately when you get back to the station to get the contaminants off of you. When it comes in the station, our vehicles back into the stations, obviously, for weather conditions and keeping the equipment inside warm conditions, especially in the winter. Our exhaust blows directly into our base, which in turn gets sucked through our HVAC system and then scatters throughout our stations at that point. We worked on trying to at least segregate those units, so it's not actually drawn into what we consider the living quarters or the office areas.
They're still trying to get it out of our bay areas. Basically, whenever you leave the station, there's a hose that hooks to your truck, basically, follows a track in the roof or the ceiling, and gets sucked out through a ventilation system, either through a wall or through the roof, just depends on obviously the building structure. All that exhaust gets sucked outside, and nothing's actually blowing inside the station. When the trucks pull up to the station, they go to back in or pull in, depending on what station you're at. You hook that hose up, it's like a magnetic mount. It's attachment to the exhaust pipe. Those trucks back in, all the exhaust is literally blowing into that system itself. It keeps tries to eliminate a lot of the cancer causing agents that are in exhaust systems from blowing literally inside our stations, on our equipment, on our fire gear that we're also already washing off. So it's just trying to eliminate another cause of cancer that is hurting us across the nation.
So the request this morning is to allow us to solicit bids, to have a cost estimate for the inclusion of this at our stations. At this point, we're not asking for anything more than just to solicit the bids. So I have a motion, do I have a second? And a motion and a second to solicit bids on this item. Is there any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Peru?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen Edwards? Commissioner Galbraith?
Yes, ma'am.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Chief. Also, we have a guest with us this morning that had, Miss Allison Cox, that had requested a proclamation be made, and without having Allison to have to wait further, she would like to have that proclamation read and a photo with the commission members. And so, Aaron, if you would give that to the mayor so he could read that, and then we'll do a quick photo op with the mayor and the commission on this.
I have some mementos too to pass out to you guys.
Okay, from the office of the mayor of Paris, Kentucky, a proclamation declaring the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day. This proclamation declares the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the city of Paris, to honor and remember all victims and survivors of gun violence, and to declare that we as a country must do more to reduce gun violence. Whereas every day, 100 Americans are killed by gun violence, and on average, there are nearly 13,000 gun homicides every year. And whereas Americans are 25 times more likely to be killed with guns than people in other high-income countries. And whereas protecting public safety in the communities they serve is mayor's highest responsibility. And whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from people with dangerous histories. And whereas mayors and law enforcement officers know their communities best, are the most familiar with local criminal activity and how to address it, and are best positioned to understand how to keep their citizens safe. And whereas in January 2013, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Hadiyah Pendleton, a teenager who marched in President Obama's second inaugural parade and was tragically shot and killed just weeks later, should be now celebrating her 22nd birthday. And whereas to help honor Hadiyah and the 100 Americans whose lives are cut short, and the countless survivors who are injured by shootings every day, a national coalition of organizations has designated June 7, 2019, the first Friday in June, as the 5th National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And whereas the idea was inspired by a group of Hadiyah's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange. They chose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods, and orange is a color that symbolizes the value of human life. And whereas anyone can join this campaign by pledging to wear orange on June 7th, first Friday in June of 2019, to help raise awareness about gun violence. And whereas by wearing orange on June 7th, 2019, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. Now therefore be it resolved that Mayor Plummer of the City of Paris declares the first Friday in June 7th, 2019 to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day. I encourage all citizens to support their local community's efforts to prevent the tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human lives. In witness thereof, I hereby set my hand and cause this seal to be affixed. John Plummer, Mayor.
So I think that if we could get the commission in front of the City of Paris sign right there, real briefly, and have Wisconsin, and we'll get a photo, picture of that.
If you want to be.
Come on, Mayor. I don't know. All right, there we go. Yeah.
Now we're good.
Where's yours?
All right, there we go. Thank you. Good seeing you. It's not wearing orange.
So thank you. We'll move to our financial business section. It's approval of payment of invoices. Brad?
So on page 22, you'll have the general fund listing of checks. Need approval for $95,759.23. On the next page, page 23, we have the utility fund. Need approval for $184,213.64.
It's the pleasure of the commission. Have a motion, do I have a second? Motion and a second to approve payment of bills and invoices and the amounts enumerated. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Peru?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen Edwards? Commissioner Galbraith?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Brooks? Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move on to outstanding accounts payable.
So starting on page 24 through page 31, you'll have the general fund invoices in that have not been paid. Just have a small balance of $4,025.43, and then starting on page 32 through page 40 is the utility fund side. Currently, we have $108,019.62 for invoices that are in.
Any questions? Thank you. Move on to our outside agencies reports. Andrea?
Next Thursday, we have a planning commission meeting. There are 2 items on the agenda, 2 zoning text amendments. One is for the unincorporated county to raise the height maximum for detached garages, and which the city already has. Had recently raised from 15 to 18 feet, so it's the same thing but in the unincorporated county. And then the other zoning text amendment is related to the joint board of adjustment. So we'll have 3 text amendments on there for the city of Paris, the city of North Middletown, and the unincorporated Bourbon County. So those items will be posted online the Thursday before the meeting, so this Thursday. And otherwise, we've been going full speed on our comprehensive plan update. So thank you for those of you that have been able to attend our working group meetings. The next meeting is June 18th.
I didn't get that.
It's June 18th.
You better be there.
Soon, come on. Good timing, Pat.
She's at a loss for words now.
My phone says that to me every day.
Was that Siri or Alexa?
City phone.
All the girls.
So I hope that, those of you that are interested in participating in the public health working group, that's next Monday. So, our schedule's online. I've handed out schedules to many of you. Please spread the word. The more participants we have, the better and more representative our plan will be of the community, so.
That's gonna be the city barn, right?
Yes, that's correct. So that's all I have today.
Betty Ann?
First and foremost, I want to thank you all for your continued support of the Harris-Bourbon County Tourism Commission. It is greatly appreciated because, as you know, we're not eligible for the restaurant tax, but it was good to hear Mr. Cheney say that they might be able to work that in somewhere. So that would be excellent news, because when I go to the regional meetings, that's what everybody's talking about. So I hope that they can make that happen soon. I've sent out 44 resource packets to all the bed and breakfasts. I finally think I've tracked them all down, but doesn't mean that somebody's not gonna pop up tomorrow. So they've gotten a thick resource packet. I've only gotten one back because it was the wrong address. Probably had about 15 or so that paid this month. I don't think it was because of the resource packet. I just think that the first quarter of the year is usually slower. So as the summer progresses, we'll see. I am sending out nice reminders, this time only, with a self-addressed envelope, trying to get everybody to send back their taxes. Next quarter, which would be the end of July, if they don't send them back, those non-compliant notices are going out. I won't be as nice anymore. Let's see. I have updated I'm working on updating all the information for the Kentucky Travel Guide about Paris and Bourbon County for 2020. And I have completed the summer ad for the Travel Host magazine. Horsey 100 probably had about 800 or 900 cyclists that came through, which was very successful. And Savory Cycle, Matt, how many do you think were there? About 100?
Yeah,
there were.
I mean, throughout the whole event, yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot. I kept trying to go to trackside to see if I could catch a picture, but I never could get them all. But Pat Connolly did a great job of taking pictures, so I've just been sharing his. I have been attending the workshops that Andrea's been having. The Licking Valley Adventures Tourism Map has gone to press and will be coming out probably within the next 30 days, did she say? I don't think she gave a time. And on Friday this week, we're having a memorial for Steve Walton downtown. The committee has planned that, and at 2:30 everyone's invited to come. It'll be across the street from the Varden building, and we'll be placing a bench and 2 potted trees in memory of Steve. That's all I have.
Lauren?
I do want to reflect what Betty Ann said. Thank you all so much for the continued support with the Chamber of Commerce. We really appreciate those dollars every year. We have a lot of things coming up. Last week we submitted our Work Ready reapplication. We should be hearing from that in the next couple of months. We're not due till August, but it required us to submit in June. So we should be hearing from that in the next month or 2 about Work Ready. I don't see any reason why we will not be approved to be a Work Ready city again. This Friday.
I'm sorry, can you tell us, because people often ask us what it is that makes us work ready, Can you tell us?
Yeah, there's 5 criteria, that include, college degree, it's a certain percentage, college degree, some college, or an associate's degree, graduation rate, there's one that you want to be like, what was it?
The test is administered by the high schools. I mean,
The NCRC National,
College readiness.
College Readiness Certificate. That's not required, because we actually dropped this year, but that wasn't a required criteria. But I can get you a print off on what exactly is required and actually show you what our percentage was. We checked off all the requirements,
Okay.
for sure, but right after this, I'll get you a print off.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and our application was 32 pages long, so it's like doing a college essay. So it was great, finally getting that done and turned in, and so that was a check off our list. And then this Friday, we have our second festival on 5th. The weather's looking good, so I think that everything should be fine with that. Coming up, some dates coming up, June 27th, we have a lunch and learn at the library noon to 1. David Jude is gonna be speaking about workplace safety, and that'll be, like I said, at the library. Our postponed date for our golf scramble is gonna be June the 28th, the following day. And that starts at 2. Tentatively, I have not sent out information about this yet. July the 18th, just kind of mark your calendars. We have a state legislators breakfast, 9 to 10:30 at the industrial park. Hopefully, our goal is to be out in the cul-de-sac right in front of Hunt Brothers and Ag Tech in their front yards. They're gonna be speaking as well. Hunt Brothers and Ag Tech both will be speaking at that event as well. And then moving forward, August the 2nd, we have our gala that evening on Friday. So lots of events coming up.
Is it gonna be at Mustard Seed?
Mustard Seed Hill, yeah. I sent out the save the date for that, and it's gonna be at Mustard Seed Hill, and I'll send out ticketing information here in the next few weeks. The Relay for Life is Saturday. All sorts of events.
Gordon?
Well, next week, next Thursday, the 20th, we're having our second, strategic planning session at Mustard Seed Hill. We'd like to see everybody's smiling face there to contribute. We're gonna do it a little bit different, than you normally do it. We're gonna break up into 4 different groups, and then once all that's established at the end of that session, then we'll come back to the EDA board and set some goals and objectives. We're still looking for letters of support for 460. We've had a lot of good ones submitted, but we still need more. So please try to get it in at the worst, by the end of the week, if you would. We've also been working with Ag Tech and Color Point on their merger as it relates to grants that are in place and making sure that they're in compliance with all the rules, since most of them, I think there's one at Color Point and maybe the rest of them at Ag Tech, but making sure that we keep all of it straight and separated, so there's no commingling or whatever. And then we, Withrow and various other folks, Dan, on CMWA and their expansion. Every corner they turn, they've run into a lot of different situations that they hadn't planned on, but they're slowly getting there. So everybody in the city and the county really stepped in and given them all the support. I mean, every day, believe it or not, it's something different. And I mean, even though they've been working on this thing for since 2015, it's still just a lot of loose ends. So anyway, that's all I know. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to our staff reports. In your packet, you've got behind the notes, you've got the report from the fire department. Chief Duffy, is there anything?
Just update on the fire trucks. The aerial truck, we go back for a final inspection at the end of the month. Should be ready for delivery sometime, hopefully next month. They're supposed to be bringing them both at the same time. The engine, which is actually in Florida, we should be going down there. Myself and Mr. Withrow should be going down there in the next, I would say 3 to 4 weeks to do the midpoint inspection on that for the completion of it.
I will forward out, Commission, the most recent update we got, but we do have some of those pictures on the screen behind you there of the build on that one.
So Mr. Withrow and myself went up there 2 weeks ago-ish, off the top of my head, to Wisconsin to the aerial truck. It was actually first time I've ever been up there for that. Obviously Mike's been before. Very learning experience to go up there and see how the trucks are literally built from a piece of metal to where they are now. It's you learn a lot of information that's thrown at you very quick. If y'all have any questions, that's basically where we sit at now.
And then there's the actual photos of the almost completed. And again, we'll forward that out to you for those pictures. I think we just received those from the company. Chief Best?
I don't have anything today, sir.
Chad, do you have anything else to report on?
Just touch base on the violation that we received. It's disappointing, but we found up with a violation of 4,000, so excuse me, for park million. Basically it's been addressed, so it was isolated to one testing site.
So, Commission, I forwarded you that information on that. Again, it was not in, as Chad just mentioned, you may not be able to heard, it was as reported to you in that electronic communication. It was a very limited amount that was actually over in the process of the way they do and how they evaluate that, but it was not an emergent situation, and so there was no requirement on that. And sometimes, and while all violations are important to acknowledge and work to ensure that we don't have those in the future, sometimes they can cause a misunderstanding about what the level of the violation is and how that is. And it was not, there was not an emergent situation on this one. And as soon as we were notified, we followed all the protocols and procedures that are required by the state in making that. And Chad's working to get that information out as well. Aaron?
The only thing I have is to kind of recognize the utility department. We had a water main break the other day, and these guys worked from 11 p.m. until 4 o'clock the next day, and then they got called back out, 3 hours later for another break on a Friday. And so, and also the water plant, the lab comes in, and we had a restaurant that was affected, and they helped test water to get them using their water right away. And it's just, these things happen behind the scenes, and just acknowledge them and their hard work. That's all I have.
Patrick?
Finding water leaks, fixing water leaks, performed bio monitoring tests last week. Everything looks good. Steadfastly moving forward with the CMOM program, which helps address the email that we had received the other day. We have an aged system with a lot of problems. And I'm not one that wants to foolishly throw money at anything just to get people that are crying foul off our back. I'm looking to logistically go into it and figure out where are our shortcomings, where's this excess water's coming from, what parts of our distribution system is adequate, inadequate, what parts of our system need to be looped back in. Another afterthought of the program that Mike and Darren have got going on some grant money for remote read meters to put out on our collection system, distribution system, is the guys and I were discussing that once we get done using those remote read meters, they're electronic. It's not an inline meter. It has 2 electronic straps that you put on the outside of the main and records flow. You have to get it in a stretch of main where you don't have a lot of 90s or shutoffs. we could use those at like CMWA, at Vantor, because they already have a water meter vault. Not aiming to start an issue, but fire protection has never been metered. In other words, a line that is sent into a piece of industry would run their fire protection system, that's never been metered. And I know for a fact, we've had one industry here in town that had a leak, and according to their maintenance people, it had been going on for years that we had no idea. And the reason why they decided to fix it is because their electric bill on a booster pump started going up. Kind of an alarming situation in my estimation, especially when we're chasing water loss. And when we're looking at a water plant that is curtailed in its production, and then we talk about expansions and houses and the need for more water. So anyway, we could use these meters, Mayor and Darren, to place in some of these existing vaults to get an idea if we're actually losing water in places that we're just not aware of.
My question is, in your example that you just gave, was the water that was, let's say, being lost, quote, for years, was it being metered?
No, no.
It was prior to being metered.
Fire protection water is not metered, but you do pay, the facility does pay a monthly bill for having that.
Right.
Say $25 to $50 a month. for the
Well, hell,
fire
that's,
protection service.
I'm sorry.
Well,
Well, that's nothing.
When's the last time you had a fire though?
Yeah.
But to the point that we have the opportunity to, if there's a leak going on,
we can capture it.
that we would have the data to be able to address that. You know,
right.
It's not being metered, we're not realizing that it is
true.
Yeah, so there's some things that we continue on as we have the continued discussion about water loss and how to address those that beyond our initial thought of with those meters, but of having them transportable and not in line, that they have some additional benefits that we can look at using. Stephanie?
My report was in the packet.
Brad?
Yep, we're good.
Brian, you have anything else? Mr. Whitmer? I do not have anything additional. We'll start at this end. Mayor, do you have something? All right. Mr. Drew, Matt? Stan?
I'm good on Legion Drive this week.
Commissioner Allen Edwards?
A couple of things. The first thing is, I was really impressed with staff person Settles, our treasurer clerk, her report. I'd like to see that kind of information maybe put on our website, because it just shows the kinds of things that are being done by the city of Paris. And but it also was like an eye opener with some of the monies that when we're dispensing monies, and it was just an eye opener. The second thing is that a citizen has asked me about a street light in the 400 block of Lillison Avenue. She texted me yesterday, and I forgot to ask yesterday, but she says there's no street light in there, and she's talked to me before about the rationale. We've talked to Sparky about it. So she just wants us to consider having a street light put in the 400 block of Lillison Avenue.
There's no street light at all.
She said there's not one. It's just in various
Sometimes they all
places. Yeah. So and there's not one at all in that little section, and so it's completely dark there at night.
Right. And so the process on installation in the past has been the commission to recommend installation of a new light when they don't exist.
We do some evaluating. I try to look at it. We try to get with the police department for some of the night shift, look at and point out the dark spots, and then
We'll bring back a recommendation after review.
Thanks.
Anything else? We will need a motion to go into executive session for deliberations on a potential future acquisition of real property by a public agency, but only when the publicity would be likely to affect the value of a specific piece of property to be acquired for public use or sold by a public agency pursuant to KRS 61.8101B. Do we have some motions?
Mayor, before, city manager, before, excuse me, you vote to go into executive session, excuse me, the citizen would like to object if there's going to be any discussion of the county's proposal to buy property on Millersburg Road, because that is now a matter of public record. It has been discussed publicly. The judge executive has announced it, and if it's going to be discussed here, I believe the citizen would ask that it be done in open forum.
If the city's gonna join that?
What?
If the city's gonna join into that, I think you're absolutely right, it's legitimate to be discussed, but the amount of money that the city may be willing to contribute to any counteroffer certainly would affect the value of the property and the price that the seller may be willing to come down to, so that's the purpose of the executive session.
Say that again?
The negotiation over the price is the purpose of the executive session.
Well, the price has already been announced publicly, what the county has offered.
The original offer from the county.
Yes.
But that doesn't enjoin the city. The city has not made determination as such.
That's correct.
So
But if the city's gonna join in, why wouldn't that be part of the public?
We would, if that would be the vote for the city, we would come out of executive session and have that vote public, but the discussion would be private.
This is offer, counter offer, counter offer, counter offer. As long as the city and county are considering prices and values of the property, and I think that's legitimate to be an executive session. If it were an up or down vote, yes, and that will be done in public session. But the discussion that this body's always done, even when they're standing offers, there's the back and forth that occurs. So that's where we are. Does that calm your objection?
Does it?
Okay.
But I hear what you say, and we will still object.
So I have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion, the motion and a second by Commissioner Brooks to go into executive session as read, under KRS 61.8101B, seconded by Commissioner Galbraith. Roll call, please.
Mayor Plummer,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen Edwards,
Approved.
Commissioner Galbraith,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Brooks, Commissioner Peruth.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We stand in executive session, and again, no action to be taken within executive session. If action is needed, we would re-adjourn to common session and take such action at that point.